let me know when you want me to. So we thought rather than sometimes we ask people kind of to introduce themselves and they do a terrible job.
Yeah.
You're probably quite good at it now, to be honest.
It's obviously a lot of practice. So we thought we'd read out the first part of your Wikipedia page.
Okay.
Because I'm guessing there's a lot of people who don't know a lot about you and your background.
Well, probably. I mean, like I've been the MP for nearly 16 years.
Yeah.
But time moves on quickly, and you become old news quite quickly. So you can ask whatever you like. But I mean, I've been the MP. I grew up in North Wiltshire on a glasshouse nursery. My mother was a hairdresser. Mm-hmm. My father had this nursery. Didn't want me to go into it. We're doing okay. We employed 5 or 6 people, growing pot plants, flowers. Got the train from Chippenham to Bath for 10 years. Went to school, King Edward's in Bath. Yeah. And then went to university. Became a management consultant.
Head boy at Mansfield College, Oxford?
I was head boy at school and I was president of the college junior common room at Mansfield College in Oxford. Yeah. And then I always wanted to go into politics. My dad took me up to the house when I was 11 and I just had a light bulb moment. And 25 years later...
Is that a thing? I always wanted to be in politics?
Yeah, I mean, but when
Says nobody ever.
We'll need some sort of jingle. Salisbury Business Podcast. Salisbury Business Podcast. Why, just off the cuff? Yeah. Did you just think of that?
What is that though? Why
I'm kidding, it's shit.
When I was 11, like my dad was really clear, I don't want you to come into this business. It's 100 degrees, it's tough work. I want you to have other options. And so I went up to visit my MP at the time, Richard Needham, and I just sort of thought, take responsibility for things, try and help, make things better for people and contribute to the government of the country. And, as I say, went to university, did another career first, which I think is really important. I was a management consultant. I was going to big firms typically and trying to help them work out BP or GlaxoSmithKline. I was a magistrate for 6 years, moved to London. And then I was director of research for the Conservative Party. So I sort of had a little break. And I also worked for William Hay 25 years ago. When
that was 2000, was that?
2001.
Yeah.
And then eventually I got selected here when I was in my mid-30s and a few months before the 2010 election when David Cameron became Prime Minister. Yeah. And then half the time I've been a backbench MP and half the time I was a minister. And my highest job was being in the Cabinet as Chief Secretary, sort of deputy to the Chancellor. And then I did the infected blood compensation scheme for people who were infected with blood products from the NHS.
And that was
18 months ago, just before the election was called in May 2024.
You made an appearance on Sky News.
Well, I do quite a lot of media at different times. I don't know which clip you found.
Well, I thought you dealt with it quite well, but she was grilling you a lot.
What you do as a minister is you do a media round on a sort of routine basis, and you might do 15 interviews one after the other. So you might do breakfast TV, and then you do Radio 4, then you do GB News, then you do Sky, and of course like an
afternoon. Or
no, that'd be like an hour and a half in the morning.
Yeah,
and so if you're in government and you're trying to push the story of the day for the government, you'll be the one who's sent out. So when there was a budget or something like that, I'd be often sent out on the round, and that would start at say 6:15, and you do all of those different outlets until about 9 o'clock.
Are you panicking that you've got to say the same thing to all of them, and then there's any inconsistency?
Yeah, well, you do have to prepare, but obviously you're trying to be consistent, and they've each got quite a small amount of time, so you're not going to vary it very much.
Okay, that's interesting. And so in terms of because obviously I think the outer view of politics is private educated, it's a very kind of privileged environment, I think, to a lot of the I guess general public. Did you find that because obviously I know the private school educated in King Edward's is private in Bath.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Do you find that kind of helped keep pushing you there? Do you think?
No, not at all. I mean, look, as I say, both my parents left school at 16. They just about had enough money to send me to school. I mean, it wasn't Eton. I was going home every night, and I was working in jobs like everyone else at the weekends and all the rest of it. But it did set me up to prize education and educational achievement. And going to university became an immediate goal once I started there. But I was the first person to go to university. My sister went after me. There was no pressure to go into politics. It's like now, it's still seen as an odd thing to do.
Do you feel like that's an unfair stick that politicians get beaten with? You know, like that it's the Oxford, it's the Cambridge, it's the if you don't go there, you know.
Well, I don't think that's true. I mean, there's plenty of people who don't go to Oxford and Cambridge and go into politics. I mean, politics, despite the cynicism, is about public service. Half my time is spent here in Salisbury, which is my home. I come back from London on a Thursday afternoon and I'm here visiting businesses. I was at the Chambers of Commerce this morning. I've just met with the Chief Executive of South Western Railway. I'm on the board of Elaborate, so I've been at a meeting there. I'll be talking to the Chief Executive of the hospital about complaints people have made later after this, and then I'll do national media. I'm here usually all the time until Monday morning. And then I go up to Westminster on the train and spend 3 nights in London. And, that's when I participate in national conversations and hopefully try and represent Salisbury's best interest. This week I had a meeting with a minister and a constituent from West of Salisbury in Chilmark. She had a really great scheme called Corefulness, which actually gets children in schools to sit up straight and my job was to try and get the minister to buy into what she had. And she said at the end of the meeting, we'll get one of the officials in the Department of Education to look at this. It sounds great. You're making a real difference. And that's sort of my job, to be an advocate. So even now I'm in opposition, I can, influence things in the favour of Salisbury.
How do you find because again, it almost feels like sometimes you're in the opposition, you have to have a military point of view here, and then obviously if you're in government, you're arguing the polar. Do you find like that you're told to have a point of view sometimes? Like how much pressure do you have to kind of toe a party line rather than your own maybe personal beliefs sometimes?
Well, look, when you're in government, you're part of something called collective responsibility. You can't have a government where one minister is saying one thing and a minister in the other department is saying something different. And I was a minister for 7 years, 5.5 years in the Treasury. And then I was the arts minister for 6 months and then also paymaster general, as I explained, doing the infected blood in the cabinet office. And when I was in that situation, I couldn't just say what I thought on absolutely everything because I was bound by the collective fortunes and narrative of that government. Now, when you're in opposition, I still feel I will support my party because I suspect most people, voted on national stuff. I'm not arrogant enough to think that I got in because there's something completely wonderful about my own personality.
Don't put yourself down. I'm sure there is something.
Well, no, I'm sure there must be some redeeming qualities. But my mum probably thinks so. But the point is, but when I'm in opposition, I've got more latitude because, frankly, what I say has less weight because I'm not responsible for making decisions on how taxes are spent or whatever. But, I mean, I've always tried to be constructive. I just had a meeting with the rail and he thanked me for saying something positive about him. And I said, well, why wouldn't I? Look, it's my interest for the business case that you're putting for investment on South Western Railway to be successful. There's no point me just sniping all the time. So that's generally the approach I take. But sometimes if I disagree with something, then obviously I will call it out. And there are some things this government have done for business on, business rates, a very bungled reform, like some of, your business when you employing people, you'll have felt the effect of national insurance. And indeed, last week I asked about the national living wage. For some young people, it's gone up. Great, it's gone up. But who's paying for it? For you two, employing people and the people that are listening to this, the increase in the national living wage combined with the increase in national insurance means a 10-11% increase last year. And what that means is people are thinking, well, if I'm running a pub or a small business, how am I going to afford to take anyone else on? And it's fewer jobs for local people in those, labour intensive, low paid situations. Now, the government minister would say, well, we believe in higher wage economy. I said, well, fine. But if it means you've got record unemployment, which we now have, highest unemployment for 5 years, there are consequences.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Do you find like that do you find you're pulled pillar to post on stuff? Because again, I saw an article in the Journal where you're talking about under 16s not being allowed access to social media, and then that kind of becomes a thing for a week. And then, as you said about Trump's comments this morning about the British military on the front line, and the first thing I heard was that, there was 2 families going, I think it was 457 troops that died in Afghanistan from the British military. And you're like, so then he's just gone and insulted basically a whole military division. Well, do you find that you're constantly on different things?
People look for you to have a view on things. And it's been amplified over my 15, 16 years as an MP. You've now got X, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. I've got to work out whether I go on TikTok or not. And, to manage all of that and come up with appropriate content that meets what you know to be the demographics of those audiences and have a view. I mean, you could just be on social media the whole time. And frankly, it does oversimplify things, okay? It's quite complicated fixing some of the problems that we have in this country. And often there's little appetite to listen and have enough time to have a proper discussion. This sort of opportunity in a podcast where you can actually have a few more minutes to say how you think about things and what some of the problems are is welcome. Because, frankly, we live in an age where clipping people's media utterances...
He is clever, so go.
Well, I mean, that's... And of course, it's down to, the commercial imperatives around... getting clips that say interesting things to make money. I can understand how it works.
Yeah, the clipping side of it for this podcast, for example, we need a decent enough hook for somebody to then click on it. Obviously, a lot of people want to listen anyway.
Let's be realistic. I don't think there's millions of people waiting to hear from me. But hopefully there's some people in Salisbury. For you two, sorry. How wrong of me.
It's and that's an interesting trend, isn't it? Yeah, because 15 years ago, when you first got elected as MP here, it's a completely different social world we live in now, isn't it?
I remember, as a kid in near Chippenham where I grew up, and the MP saying to my dad, for goodness sake, Philip, stop writing great big long letters. Well, I hardly ever get a handwritten letter or a typed letter.
Just you open your email inbox and you
go, there's 300. I mean, I got over 500 emails on banning under 16s from social media.
That's crazy.
And of course, people go on to campaign websites and they just put in their postcode and they just click send. And of course, some of them don't know they've sent it. Some of them expect a reply immediately. And I think the trouble is when you sent something, you expect somebody to respond. I don't look at comments on any of my social media.
Probably for the best.
Why is that?
Well, because I'm told they're not too kind.
You'll be right. You'll be right.
So it doesn't worry me in the least. So anyone who's keyboard warriors writing there, I don't read it.
But what if those keyboard warriors... And there was a couple of because we put out, didn't we?
I understand you asked for questions. Yeah,
we put out.
And there was a couple of really sensible ones. And you're thinking, okay, and I think a couple of people, and this will be a follow-up question as to kind of what jurisdiction you have on certain things. I think some people think that you have this magic wand that you can just walk around and go, right, solve that.
Yeah. And so somebody asking about. Somebody behind, I think, the gym that we use, asking me about whether I should be going up sorting landlords out who don't deal with damp.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sorry, I don't have license over those people. What I would do in those circumstances is hear what's happened and see if there is an issue around whether the council be interested if it doesn't meet appropriate standards, and assist any individual to work to get to the bottom of the problem. If somebody emails me with a problem, I will do everything I can to fix it.
But you also can't compel private people
to do so.
No, of course I can't. So again, I think that's the bit is like, and I'd like to get this clear to people is, what do you feel you have the most direct immediate influence on that you can affect? So. And what is stuff like that? Do you want to get across to people that actually I understand your frustration and I will try and do, but I can't do X on private landlords. There was somebody who asked about there's no rear access to the is it opposite the old Bolton House? Yeah. There's no rear access to the train station, and I was thinking, but surely that's Great Western Railway's decision whether they put.
Well, I can tell you that actually we'd love to redevelop the train station, but that is a longer term capital project. That has just been what I've been talking to the chief executive of SWR about. But it demands quite a lot of work because it'll need investment and it'll need an agreement to use other parts of the estate. It involves conversations between Wiltshire Council, which I've had, and SWR. But these things,
well, if you're using roads
exactly. And if you think about, we had money from the High Streets Fund. I think about 9 million from memory. In late 2019, 2020, I seem to remember Rob Jenrick at the time rang me up to tell me. And of course, we've done up Fishton Street and we've done up the station forecourt, but that took like 4 years.
Yeah.
Now, it's too slow sometimes and very frustrating for people to get this. But then if we don't do things in the right way, you get a massive outpouring of angst. I mean, look at the whole issue around that tight corner around the bridge. As
killer curve.
Yeah. I mean, so
killer curve.
There's always it takes too long sometimes. And I get people's frustrations. The big one I get mostly in Salisbury is, well, two things really. One is, the number of shops closures. And there is always quite a lot of churn in retail. But the source of that is that people often there's an optimism bias sometimes when businesses are set up or retail space is taken, but they're often owned by insurance companies who don't want to reduce the rental yield they've got on their books because it will reduce the value of the asset that they've got on their books. Right? You'll understand that. Yeah. So that's why they.
I don't understand it.
Don't worry, we'll explain later.
So I can't go out and get retailers to come in to fill the space in different roads in Salisbury. What I can do is say, how can Salisbury maximise the footfall it has? And the figures are, we always seem to be doing that little bit better than places of a similar size. People say, go to Winchester or Bath. I said, well, Hampshire's a wealthier county. Bath, where my mother lives, is a much bigger place and has got more
universities.
A university, for example.
Yeah.
And you can't just conjure those things up. In Southampton Road, University Centre that we've got there, Wiltshire College and University Centre, that's had massive refurbishment investment over the last 5 years. It's now got a roll that's, I think, over 1,000. It's gone up 300 or 400 over the last few years. So everything I can do to get alongside, refurbishment of the theatre, the Playhouse, definitely on the agenda. There's work to be done there, and I work with Rosa, the business director there, to make sure that is in the best place. But I can't fix everything.
I was going to say, how do you prioritize what you can have the most? Because it feels as though a lot of the stuff that we see that come in, it's everybody's got a different emotional point of view based on what is affecting their lives the most. It literally, the variety of what people were talking about was just was the thing that struck me.
Potholes, classic.
That's
the biggest one.
But again, as I said, I think it's really interesting to hear what you can do, because again, I feel as though there's criticism that probably comes to everybody, especially in your role and what you do, that is probably justified, and then you get some of it which you're probably thinking, actually, I physically I'll try, but that's so far out of my hands to actually compel someone that it's tricky, isn't it?
Well, look, there's only one MP in any other place, so I take my responsibility very seriously. I've got more opportunities and often to influence better outcomes for things than anyone else. I accept that. But I've also got to recognise that we've got local council, city and unitary, and they're not run by my party at the moment. So I've got to say, well, how can I influence that? So if you take the vexing issue of potholes, right, ultimately there's a combination of revenue from business rates and council tax and grants from central government, and we're not doing so well under this government. Money going to Wiltshire Council is less than it was previously, and that's because they've changed some of the formulas. The rurality of Wiltshire is not recognised in the same way that it was, and deprivation has got a higher weighting, so we don't get as much cash. And then the council, they inherited a previous allocation from the Conservative administration of 20 million to invest on potholes.
Was that a one-off figure, or is it?
No, that was after getting the budget into the right place, and they'd allocated that on top of what they'd had previously. And then what happens is, I will go to, and I did, I went to the Don Heads, obviously west of Salisbury about 6 months ago, or no, I think it was more like this time last year, because they were saying, look, this is just outrageous. So then I go to the council and say, well, what are you doing about prioritisation of different parts of potholes? And the councillor there said, well, we're not getting what we should do for a comparable ward of Wiltshire Council to one up in Melksham.
Yeah.
And then you look at it and you look at the number of deaths on the road, and then you look at the issues around where the risk of not doing it is. And if you've got limited resources, you have to prioritise.
Mm-hmm.
So if it was about me just shouting at people, saying, go to the Don Heads and do it. No, what I'd say is, look, it's all very well, but they pay their council tax. They need those potholes done. I've had a lady fall over and break her arm, another one break her leg. You need to at least do some ameliorative work on some of these worst hotspots, even if you're not going to do the complete fix down Watery Lane or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So that's what I get involved in.
Mm-hmm.
Now, can I fix it? No. Can I have a sensible dialogue to get some fixes done? Hopefully sometimes, and if not, give people clarity over when it will be fixed.
And I guess they don't want you breathing down their neck with all. I mean, or can they just turn around and go, "Yeah, cool, John, thanks," but
well, they could do, and maybe they do. I don't think they do. Most politicians, whatever party, try and go into this to try and make a difference. So on that sort of shop front, I chair something in Salisbury called the Place Partnership every 3 months. This was something that was set up after Novichok in 2018 to try and bring the sort of key decision makers in Salisbury together. So there's representatives of the City, Unitary Council, Wiltshire College, Hospital, Chambers of Commerce, Museum, Cathedral. We get together with senior officers of Wiltshire Council and say, right, well, what are we going to do about the sort of planning issues in Salisbury? What are we going to do? And, we have those conversations to try and sort of drive forward agendas so everyone can be joined up. Next year, we've got Salisbury 800, the 800th anniversary of the founding of with the Charter for Salisbury being set up. Let's use that. How can we maximise that to showcase all that Salisbury has? I mean, the museum, the cathedral, the playhouse, the arts centre, the cultural institutions, the history of performing music and live music in Salisbury is massive. We need to get more people to come here. If we can do that, we can get more people to say, right, well, actually, we need to get better restaurants. People want to set up restaurants here, more restaurants.
Well, I guess
and all of that adds footfall and then, But
then we're going back around to like if because of the insurance issue, because of the insurance stuff, and not wanting to bring down values, we're not bringing enough people into the empty units in Salisbury. Right. Not enough footfall because we don't have the empty unit, and then so it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy after a while, isn't it? Like how do you get it all to work as a
there are also intergenerational differences. For young people to get on the housing ladder in Salisbury is difficult because property is expensive. So then when we have new houses going to be built, yes, we want them, but not here. And, infrastructure to go with it or to go ahead of it. And, people behave differently, progressively over the last generation. Obviously, people buy things on Amazon. They buy things online because they can get it immediately. But if we don't support our market, we don't support Salisbury retailers, then, that process is going to continue. In my time we've had Primark, and we've had Brad Beers. Those are two significant investments in the last 5 years, and obviously footfall's pretty good on Saturday and Tuesday with the market. But I can't fix everything, but I'm always up for trying.
Do you have influence on what shops
go
where?
Well, no, because it's privately owned assets who decide on rents and who wants to go.
So it's not put to a vote whether a vape shop can get set up.
Because again, you get
there's nothing stopping a vape shop from
if the shop is owned privately, as long as it's not breaking the law and somebody's going to pay rent, then if there's any allegation of any criminal activity, then obviously it's a matter for the police. And obviously people do say things to me about lots of things, and I have to make a judgment.
John, what are you doing about the vape shops and the bars?
That's one of the
I
questions.
don't want to vilify or any of the vape shops and barbers, but I'm aware of the prevailing doubts over
legitimacy,
the provenance of some of these.
I think it's more the volume of it.
which I think is...
When I was about 25 years ago, I was interviewed for a job at a company called McKinsey's, and they usually ask you questions like, how many light bulbs do you think there are in the UK? Which is quite an odd thing to say.
Question.
Yeah, where do you start? Because I assume they want you to show awareness of how many people are in the UK, how many businesses, how many in a home, etc., etc. And then they want you to discuss the evolution in light bulbs, and that's to try and demonstrate they understand your way of thinking. And I often think, well, how many barber shops should there be, based on the fact that how many people are there, how frequently do we need a haircut, how many people are bald, and if you work out all of that and what the age distribution is, where would you get to?
Yeah.
But then, I'm not in the business of
telling somebody.
And it's clearly not my job. What I'm interested in is to, see that people, the law is held to, and where things aren't. Often people come to me with neighbour disputes rather. And I'm just like,
he's not very good at the drums.
What do I do? What do I do here?
What's the juiciest one you've ever had?
Well,
without mentioning names,
I've got to be careful about that. But, the point is often I find that I've got to weigh things up quite carefully, not just bear the last impression of bear the impression of the last person who sort of spoke to me.
You must get it and just go, oh, for God's sake.
Some of it.
I can possibly comment, Adam. My job is to do my best, and for everyone. Yeah. And, when I was in UMP, I had the privilege of being asked for lunch with Trudy Styler, Sting's wife. Mm-hmm. It's not in the constituents anymore because the Woodford Valley is in East Wiltshire. And I went there for lunch, and she wanted to talk to me about quality of food in schools. And I'd done a bit of research, and actually in Wiltshire the food was very good. And I thought, gosh, here I am in this wonderful house in the Woodford Valley, waited on for this organic chicken soup and so on. It was lovely. I came into Salisbury, and I was with Morning Star Homeless Charity as we were then giving meals to the homeless and people with mental health problems and so on. And I think that to me expressed the whole range. Another contrasting experience was I was on the Defence Select Committee for 2 years, which is a cross-party group of MPs who scrutinise what the Ministry of Defence are doing. I'm now on the Treasury Select Committee. Yeah. And then I went to Afghanistan, and I sat down with the Select Committee with President Karzai. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the week, I came back here and had a surgery. And a lady came to my surgery from one part of Salisbury, and she said to me, "Mr. Glen, I've got an ant's nest in my back garden. What are you going to do about it?" And I thought, well, if I ever write a memoir, it will be from
President Karzai to the ant's nest.
Yeah, from tea with President Karzai to the ant's nest in wherever it was.
That's fantastic.
What did you do about the ant's nest?
I can't remember. Probably could have written to the council and said, look, if there was a serious issue.
What, you yourself didn't go there and sort it out?
Well, some of
Come on, John.
I know, but you see, sometimes you've got to just say, well, look, I'm sorry, I can't do it.
Yeah.
But, it is heartbreaking when you see people come to you with, children with special educational needs and they're not getting assessed and they don't get access to what they need. That's a problem.
It feels like it's just been such a volatile last 10 years. Since the Brexit vote in 2016, it just feels like we've had this 10 years of just, especially here. And one of the questions was going to be what's been the single most challenging event in Salisbury, and I imagine Novichok was probably that.
Yeah, Novichok was so unexpected. Yeah, Novichok in March 2018 was massive. I was sat in Westminster and looked at the screen. I thought, flipping heck.
That's the more things.
And I thought this is where there was some homeless and drug users problem. I thought, I must get onto that. And then I thought, flipping heck. Mm-hmm. And then it just opened up. The
Your
next
colleagues
day
being like, here we go, John, busy few weeks ahead.
I was sat next to Boris Johnson as when he was Foreign Secretary, and then the Prime Minister. And obviously I couldn't say anything because I was a minister. So if you're a minister, you don't sit on the backbenches. So again, back to collective responsibility. But the government at the time were very helpful. We got extra resources for Salisbury.
I guess that's got obviously greater political standings with, Putin and probably going into things you can't talk about here. But,
yeah, wow.
But obviously I guess that there's a political interest at a higher level when it's
we knew
coming from that angle. Yeah?
We knew quite early on that Putin had ordered for Skripals to be taken
quite
out.
tense, isn't it?
And he personally made that decision. But I was made aware that they knew what was going on, but they didn't want us to report. They didn't want it reported because they wanted to try and get hold of the guys who'd done it before they got back to Russia. But that wasn't possible. So a notice to, arrest warrant was put out for them. But I mean, it's very unlikely we'll ever get them.
Yeah.
I mean, I think COVID was pretty grim as well. I was Economic Secretary to the Treasury, which is one of the junior roles in the Treasury. Underneath the Chancellor, there's 5 ministers in the Treasury. And I love that job. I did it for longer than anyone's ever done it, since 1947 when it was created. And I was there when everyone was saying, well, if I'm not allowed to go out, I can't meet my customers and suppliers. How is my business going to survive?
Yeah.
So we set up the furlough scheme, which took a few months to set
I missed that by 2 days. I was, and actually that's why I'm here, because I had basically no choice. I had to be start up a business, and thank Rishi for cutting the stamp duty out, and that set me up. But it was an interesting time.
It was really tough, and of course, then we had bounce back loans, and we'd had the financial crisis previously, and one of the changes to banking was that banks would only be able to give loans if they could see a forward look to your likely trajectory of income. And of course, that was impossible when the economy had shut down.
Yeah.
So we had to do fixed price loans at 2.5% and make them very accessible. But then the problem was, and of course now everyone's saying it was all full of fraud and all the rest of it, we had to make, we had to put reasonable constraints. So, did you have a legal entity? Was it established? Was it recognised by Companies House? Was it registered with HMRC? Otherwise, we'd have enormous risk that people would opportunistically set up a business and claim the loan.
Absolutely, yeah.
And of course, I recognise, at the margins, there were some people that did play the system, have multiple businesses, take a loan out for each of them, et cetera, collapse the businesses. Of course, but at that time, we had to support the economy, and many, many millions of jobs were saved because of what we did then. And now, could we have done it differently? Of course we could. Should we have done the lockdowns? All of these things will be debated, and obviously there's a public inquiry ongoing about that. But at the time, I was there with the Chancellor saying, right, well, what are we going to do? Getting the banks on the phone saying, well, what can you do in what time frame? And I was getting hundreds of emails and WhatsApp messages from colleagues in the House of Commons saying, you've got to save my business or save these businesses, as well as constituents who were saying, well, what's happening? Yeah. Because, with low margin, high churn businesses, particularly at that, at that time of the year, it was very, very difficult.
The thing, and obviously my knowledge of everything, how it works behind the scenes is going to be limited. But everything's linked, isn't it? It's like you've got to. The banks have to be happy. The banks are obviously how gilt funds are being affected, how pensions are being affected. Like everybody's got a different interest.
Yeah, we did.
How do you deal with the whole?
Well, we had to deal with them all.
It's insane, isn't it?
So, like, if you think about it, theatres, cinemas, they all had to be shut because you can't sit next to each other. So how are you going to cater for that? Yeah. So we had different tiers of loans. You had bounce back loans, as they became called, and then you had higher levels of loan, and in the end, deals with the Bank of England for other arrangements around borrowing. It was incredibly difficult, and the whole world was experiencing similar challenges. So that was.
How far do you think that period set us back?
Massively.
In terms of where would we be without COVID? Is this just set us back 15 years in the?
Well, the convenient narrative for many is all politicians are useless. 14 years of Tory failure, and of course I get it all the time. But I think there are 3 big things that happened during my time in politics so far. One is, under the Blair-Brown years, the government took on a lot more, did a lot more. And that meant people expected a lot more. But the growth rate we've seen in the economy since what we call the global financial crisis in 2008 has been much lower. So we haven't had the receipts. And Brexit, whether you agree with it or not, I didn't vote for Brexit, but the small majority did, and therefore we implemented it, was always going to be disruptive. It was never going to be a smooth path to a, complete. And it meant different things to different people. Some it was about trade, some it was about immigration, some it was about independence. And that took a long time.
How much of that do you think was done on fact rather than...
Well, all binary choices like that, when you allow people a choice, nobody gets a qualification to vote. We did away with that many decades ago. So anyone has the right
Any chance
to
of that
express
coming
their...
back?
Well, no, it's interesting you say that. I mean, no, anyone can vote on whatever was important to them. And form a view that's their view based on whatever they want it to be. And then I think if I just finish on this, the third thing was COVID, to answer your question. It was massive. COVID, we spent 350-ish billion. And of course, everyone a couple of years later just wanted tax cuts. Well, in your private and business life, when you take on debt, you've got to pay it off. And of course, then we had the first war on the continent of Europe since the Second World War, which had a massive spike in energy costs and inflation. Now, when some of my political opponents say, well, we had 11% inflation. Well, there were distinct circumstances around that. And, I
guess it's just people, I guess it's cognitive dissonance, isn't it? If you can't see it, you don't feel it a lot of the time. And like, so if you can turn on the news and go, that looks terrible in Ukraine and Putin's an arsehole and all this kind of stuff. And then you actually shut it and you go, yeah, I know, but I can't put money on my gas meter. And okay, well, that's the UK government. And it almost,
that's
do you see what I mean? You almost like, because that's completely fair, but then I guess that doesn't also help the people that are struggling to heat their homes, right?
Well, so we put a massive amount of help with people for their energy bills to support them, because the vast majority of people don't have any financial insulation, if you like. They don't have any savings and no margin. So, the truth is that we needed to move to help people, because overnight their energy bills doubled. So when you've done that after the bounce back loans, which were underwritten, and the furlough scheme, and all that support for all those different sectors of the economy, as well as more money in the NHS, it was not going to be something that we could recover from very easily. And then, of course, at the same time, my party was in a pretty bad state when Boris left and Liz Truss. And so the combination of all those things, meant that the outcome of the last election wasn't really much doubt overall nationally for me.
Would you change, what would you change about the political system in this country if you had a free reign and because again, it feels as though there's sort of, you're an ambitious guy, you want to progress in your career, so actually it's like, again, example, but you're saying, hi Kemi, I'm your friend, and actually also if, I'd love the opportunity to do your job. I don't know if you would, but do you get my point? Like, is it a bit backstabby at the same time as I'm trying to support you?
I've been an MP for 15 and a half years or whatever it is, and I love being the constituency MP. I always have, helping people, doing surgeries, being accessible. That is, for me, the major part of the job. Now, I had the privilege of being a minister for 7 years and in different roles. That was a great experience. I don't know whether that will come back again or not. But in the meantime, I'm very happy doing the job of being a member of parliament, which is saying, look, there are 72,000 people who rely on me to represent their best interests and to be an advocate for them to the agencies and departments of government.
Yeah, makes sense.
So some colleagues are dead set at all costs of finding a path to number 10.
Yeah.
And, I respect that.
And if not, to reform.
Well, I respect their choices. Yes, it's funny. I mean, I didn't support Rob Jenrick to be leader of the Conservative Party, and it's funny at party conference. I watched him. I watched his reaction as Kemi's brilliant speech was, reacted to by the hall, and people were shouting out, "Come on, Rob, keep clapping or start clapping."
And he's like,
and I think he realised that, whatever challenges Kemi found in the early months, that she was finding her feet, and her speech was one of the best we've seen for a generation. And, her performance
she seems very tenacious and very...
it's a great privilege to work for her. And, and I think I would suggest that his defection was more about personal ambition.
Sure.
He's a talented individual, and I respect him as a colleague. I mean, I was in the Treasury with him several years ago, and on a personal level, I wish him well. But I think to try and persuade us that this was because he felt the Conservative Party had not taken. Of course, we realised that there are big challenges in the country, but we also remain optimistic and positive about the potential of the British people, and that's what Kemi will.
Is that not a
take us
soundbite?
forward. Well, it's true. I mean,
because I think that's the sort of thing you'll say, and everybody will
well,
go,
no.
Oh yeah, he's trying to butter us up.
Well, no, I'm not trying to butter you up. I'm just trying to say. I'm just trying to say. I don't want to be relentlessly negative. We've got significant challenges. I've explained in my way of thinking where they've come from, but I've also been very clear that we can get through these difficult times. But equally, we've got some problems with this government because instead of cutting spending on welfare, which has now gone up, and will go up by billions over the next few years, at a time when quite plainly the world is moved into a very, very dangerous zone. And defence spending has urgently become a priority. It's fine in an era where we had apparent security, but we're not in that place anymore.
Oh yeah, well, certainly with all of the...
I don't know how much time you've got, but I did...
5-10, I mean...
Is that all right?
Yeah.
No.
We've got a few things, which is people, the questions that were asked.
Yeah.
I won't say them all. I know you don't read your comments, so...
I put stuff on social media, but I haven't got time to, deal with all of that.
Look at people that say...
well, I mean, most of it is quite abusive, so I don't... Why would I want to expose myself to
Yeah, most of this is as well, so I had to kind of sift through.
You sift through what you want.
You're scrolling up now and going...
Which one?
Which one's a nice quick...
None of these.
Yeah.
No, these ones are fine. So this is from Andy Munns. Salisbury Radio.
Yeah.
And he said, asking about the potential ban on under 16s using social media and which platforms do you think he would like to see included if it comes into law?
Well, basically...
Very relevant from yesterday, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I want to see children protected. Most children, it seems to me, don't want to be under that pressure on social media. I don't want to... I want adults and people over the age of 16 to be able to do what they want. I mean, as a Conservative, I believe in freedom, but... if you're banning social media for children to protect them, then I would imagine you'd want most of the main platforms that they use. But I mean, the detail of that will obviously we'll work through.
Yeah. One of them is horrible, but I'm going to read it out because it's funny. Is he happy his pension pot is getting bigger than the potholes in the roads?
It doesn't worry me at all. I earn less as an MP in cash terms than I did 16 years ago. I didn't do this job for, financial rewards. I did it for public service. And, people can believe that or not, but I was on a much different trajectory with my earnings. I chose to do this job for public service. And yes, my pension scheme is a generous one, but I'm earning significantly less than I would have been had I not done politics.
Yeah, that's interesting.
The potholes are pretty big there, aren't they?
The potholes are big in some places. And I wish the council well, building on the money that was in the budget when we left office, when the Liberal Democrats took over, in the delivery of some of these.
A lot of people did say that you're going to use this as an opportunity to poke stick at the opposition.
I didn't. I just said, I wish the Liberal Democrats well, acknowledging that they're now in charge of the council, not overall control, but it's their responsibility, and I wish them well with that. I mean, of course, I use the roads. I'm a Salisbury resident, contrary to what some people on there apparently say I live in Oxford, which I never have since I've been the MP. And the bottom line is, I want the best for the people who reside in this place.
That's good.
To finish it off, because I appreciate you obviously.
I'm going to quick fire a couple more.
Yeah,
of
go
these,
for it.
First. Yeah. A lot of them do just say, ask him,
Go on.
which I don't think is very nice. Who thought it was a good idea and why we're spending ludicrous amount of money on the ring roads, AI cameras, and creating utter chaos rather than fixing our already undrivable roads and using the money to create a Salisbury traffic relief system of bypasses?
Most of that doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
I mean, the bottom line is we've got congested roads. There is some work being done on the A36 and the approach on the Southampton Road. That's the most urgent priority from the point of view of National Highways. And I'm working with them, and the local council's working with them to try and bring some relief. But I'll tell you, if there is a scheme that emerges, we've also got to be pragmatic. We can't have the widest possible cycle lanes everywhere with no flexibility if we're going to allow traffic to move more swiftly.
Yeah, it makes sense.
But I tell you, the moment there be a credible proposal or any proposal on a bypass for Salisbury, we'd have a complete counter-reaction from the sort of greeny lefty brigade saying, we don't want to build roads over the countryside. So be careful what you wish for. I've always been pragmatic about it, but there is never a perfect option either way.
So one of the ones that's not on there, and again, I think we'll lead this into, because obviously appreciate you have to shoot off in a second, pedestrianisation of the city centre. What's your view on that? And I guess then for you to lead off into to close it, what's, I guess, two questions. What's your main goal for the next, say, 3 to 4 years? Where do you see us going? And what's the main message you want to deliver as your sort of closing thing, as to kind of, what you're trying to achieve, what you want to do, and ultimately kind of, correct any wrongs?
Look, I think with pedestrianisation, you've got to think about the access to businesses for the people that run businesses and how easy that is. It's easy to sort of carve up a map and say, let's do that. But actually businesses rely on quite a lot of need for access. And I'm pretty skeptical that is achievable. If it can be achieved, fine. We've obviously got the market square and certain parts of the city that, are basically pedestrianised. But, we're a small medieval city that has certain constraints. So let's be realistic about the easy functionality of it, and how frustrated people will be if we sort of make bold decisions without consulting experts. I'm not a traffic engineer.
Yeah.
So
neither is my dad, but he is.
Let's rely on the professionals to advise. And if we can do things, then yes, please do. But let's do things with our eyes open about the consequences of them. Mm-hmm. What was the next bit of your question? Sorry, Adam.
I guess it was just, what's your thought? What's your main goals that you want to achieve in the next 3-4 years?
I'm pleased that we've got some big retail investments. I'm always anxious about the health of Salisbury as a city. I would like to see the Playhouse developed, and I would like to see more people coming to Salisbury to enjoy our cultural assets. And, with the 800th anniversary of Salisbury coming up, it's a great opportunity to showcase Salisbury. I'd love us to be the city of culture. I once was the arts minister who helped choose who was the city of culture. I think that's a long shot, but not because we're not wonderful, but because we've got a Labour government and they may look for other places that aren't in the south of England. But I think my main message to finish on is, look, I totally realise that people, party politics and frustration with politicians of all colours, and probably me or the caricature of me or whatever you think about me. But, I've spent most of my life aspiring to be an MP, and the last 16 years being an MP. I take it very seriously. It's about being an advocate for individuals, for different communities, and getting the best things done here in Salisbury. Some of those things are frustrating and they don't happen quickly enough. And some of them are, little wins that I can achieve. And if anyone needs me, please email me. I have surgeries on demand, and, I try to be accessible, available, and do my best. But I won't change the views of many on this podcast, but it's been good to chat to you both.
No, we appreciate it.
The last thing is, do you think you'll carry on your singing career?
Well,
because you are going to get a video. It was 8 years ago.
We did see a little.
The truth is that
little clip of White Heart.
In 2010, I was made aware of a tradition that the MP, when he was elected at 11 o'clock, the day after the election, would sing the Wiltshire marching song, the Vloy Beyond the Turnip, from the balcony of the White Hart Hotel. And I was asked during the election campaign, would I do this? And I said I would. The Lib Dem candidate said he wouldn't. And then I carried it on. And then Robert Key died, sadly, my predecessor in 2023.
Yeah.
And the day after the election in 2024, I was invited to the speech day of the Cathedral School. And that's where all the musicians came from. So I went to that and we didn't do it.
Okay.
So, I suspect that tradition, one that Robert Key had reinvented as a brilliant chorister, is one that probably dies with him.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, no, it was...
It was a good watch.
Yeah. You committed to it, which
I
was,
think
you really went
I
for
probably
it.
improved. I did it in 10, 15, 17, 19.
Yeah.
And I think there's a job of work to be done to compare whether I improved. But I did.
Don't worry, we've got that. Yeah,
I did.
We'll
I did
get
have
it up
a singing lesson last year to check out whether I had some potential. And I was
So
told,
this is the content you need to be putting out.
I was told I did. Simon McHenry said I had a future as a member of a choir, but I never had time to follow up. He made me do so many odd sounding noises because we've got in my office he's a singing tutor, and on Friday afternoons sometimes we hear some very interesting noises coming out of the office next door.
Feel compelled.
But he's a very, very, very kind and very good singer and singing teacher, and I commend him.
Anyway, I would say that one recommendation is to start to respond to people on social media. I know there's abuse on there. Respond to it. Who cares? But also, there's
Dan,
there's probably a lot of people that would
I was going to say you're probably
be able to communicate to you quite easily.
Dan, the thing
through
is,
that.
like, I probably work 70 to 80 hours a week dealing with emails, doing all
On
the
the
things I
train.
do as an MP, sitting on social media, trying to respond to people who are not really interested in what I've got to say is, probably not the best use of my time.
I don't know. I think it's just Salisbury people. So if you, for example, went live on Facebook, as an example,
but people will come. They'll see your response and they'll see it as an opportunity
I'm very-
to send it to their mates in the group chat, being like, "Oh, I'm just having a Barney with John Glen."
I'm very-
Come on.
they might, but
I'm very happy to meet with anyone anytime. If you want to say something to me, come to the surgery. Have a call. But it's just unrealistic.
I'm thinking
You
of
don't
younger
really have
people. I think I'm thinking of younger people.
Don't really have, I go into schools most weeks. I go to all of the 8 secondary schools, most of the primary schools. Most schools come up to Parliament regularly, and I speak to them. I'm going to do a work experience thing this summer. Business people come and write to me, and I go and visit their businesses, meet their staff. I do everything I can to be as accessible as I can. So nobody's frightened of contact with constituents, but sort of sat in a room or at home, dealing with some of the questions or the comments.
Them for you? Why doesn't he?
Well, I know it's not authentic then, is it?
Yeah.
And then you'll tell me to be more.
I'll manage your social media.
So if I keep going on X and Instagram and Facebook and get on all the other platforms, I do put out quite a lot of material.
Yeah, I see it.
I don't interact with it because I just don't have time to do it. That's the main reason.
It is a
But
bit
I'm
of a
obviously aware of what
I think that's
people
also
say.
good for people to know that it's
I'm
not that you
obviously-
don't have time.
No, I'm obviously very aware of what people say, and I have my staff look at it, and if there are things on there that are legitimate things that I can address, I try and address them.
Oh, okay.
So I don't
Yeah.
ignore it. What I'm just saying is I don't have time to respond to it because, I've obviously got to prioritise my time. And I've explained to you what I do in a day.
Yeah.
And when I'm here on Fridays and Saturdays and Sundays and Monday mornings, and obviously in recesses as well, can't do everything.
Yeah, that's a lot. It's a lot. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for
Good.
coming
Pleasure.
on.
Thank you. And,
Right.
I don't know
Get
what
on.
clip he's going to use, but
When we get in the flow of it, we'll need some sort of jingle. Salisbury Business Podcast. Salisbury Business Podcast. Why, just off the cuff?
Yeah.
Did you just think of that?
What is that though? Why have I
I'm
got
kidding. It's shit.